Hey guys, it's Sagar, and here is my detailed camera comparison between the iPhone 13 and the iPhone 12. I took some time with this video because I wanted to take image and video samples in as many different conditions as possible. I took over 800 image and video samples with all three cameras on these phones, and in this video we are going to look at about 200 of those, so make sure you watch the complete video. Normally, we have always just seen gradual or modest updates to the cameras on iPhones year over year. So if you compare the cameras on two iPhones which came out 1 year apart, we mostly don't see any obvious improvements in terms of megapixel number or things like that. But the tech is definitely getting better in the background every year. Last year, iPhone 12 Pro Max got the biggest camera sensor on any iPhone till then as its primary camera. And it also brought the sensor chip stabilization tech to smartphones for the first time. If you wanted to get the 12 Pro Max for the best and most advanced cameras, you would have to pay a hefty premium over the regular iPhone 12. This year, iPhone 13 and even the iPhone 13 mini gets the same main camera that we saw on the iPhone 12 Pro Max, and it is backed by the ISP on the more advanced A15 Bionic processor, so we might see even better images from it. Just as the iPhone 13 was launched, Apple reduced the price of the iPhone 12 in India, and at the time of uploading this video, there is a 9,000 rupees difference between the 128GB variants of both these phones. This is the difference between their official prices. To know their current prices and discount offers, please click on the link in the description section. For the record, if you already have the iPhone 12, I don't feel you need to think about upgrading to the iPhone 13 even for the updated set of cameras. This video is mainly intended towards someone who is trying to decide between the iPhone 12 and iPhone 13 based on their cameras. In this video, let us try to find out that for the extra price, do the cameras on the iPhone 13 give us a noticeable improvement over the ones on the iPhone 12 or not. We have a lot of image and video samples to go through, but to keep this video from getting too long, instead of walking you through all the camera specs, I will leave them in this slide. You can pause the video and go through them if you want. Let us begin with the daytime shots in good lighting conditions. Images from both the phones are very good, and no matter how close you look, you won't find much difference in most of these shots. If I did not take these images myself, I might have even thought that these images have been shot with the same camera. This is not a bad thing, because the cameras on the iPhone 12 are already very good. We see no difference in some of these shots even if I zoom in on them. Despite of the sensor being larger on the main camera of the iPhone 13, we don't see any noticeable increase in the details in its images, at least not in these bright lighting conditions. We saw a similar thing last year when I compared cameras on the iPhone 12 mini with the ones on the iPhone 12 Pro Max. Like that video, hopefully we will see a bigger difference as we get to lower lighting images later on in the video. iPhone 12 and the other ones before it sometimes brought up too many details on the shadows, which is good, but on occasion that also made the images look a bit flat. iPhone 13 adds a bit of contrast in these shots, which makes them feel like they have a bit more depth in them. You can see this clearly in these set of images. Depending on your preference, you may or may not like it. I took these images over a period of few days, and that gave me a chance to take some of the images in cloudy or overcast lighting conditions. You might not see a clear difference between these images straight away, but as I zoom in, we see more details in the shots from the iPhone 13. Its bigger sensor manages to capture more information in these overcast lighting conditions. Some of the images from the iPhone 13 also look a bit brighter, and again as I zoom in, we see lines in the iPhone 13 shot to be sharper and overall image to be much more detailed. We see the same thing in all of the images which are shot in these lighting conditions. Without zooming in, both the images look pretty much the same, so it is not like iPhone 12's images don't look good. In fact, if conditions are not challenging enough, and if I did not label these images, I'm sure most people including myself won't be able to tell which of these images have been shot on which iPhone. So if you have an iPhone 12 or if you are planning to get it, you should be happy that it takes just as good images as the iPhone 13 when there is plenty of light around. Something that you can notice without zooming in is that images from the iPhone 13 show a bit richer looking colors. A part of a reason for this is the little bit of extra contrast in its images which I mentioned earlier, and I like this look. I feel colors from the iPhone 13 look more natural and are a bit more closer to how the colors looked in real life. There is no weird green or magenta tint in the images from either of these phones. The difference is very minute, but it is there, and I like the colors that the iPhone 13 is capturing in its shots. This time, Apple added something called photographic styles to the iPhone 13 series phones. This lets you choose and apply a specific style to your shots. If you feel your images need a bit more contrast, you can go with the rich contrast look. If you want a bit more saturation, you can choose the vibrant style, and so on. These are not filters that are just applied on top of the images, but these styles are baked into the shots, so you cannot undo them after the image is clicked, and all the computational algorithms like Smart HDR, Deep Fusion and so on are applied on top of it. This is a nice feature to have. I found myself using the rich contrast look for my photographic style. But for rest of the shots in this video, I kept this mode set to standard. This is sadly only available on the iPhone 13 and Apple did not include it via an update on the iPhone 12, which I feel they could have easily done. Before we go ahead, here is a quick word from today's sponsor, Capes India. Capes India offers amazing skins for your new phone. I'm not using any case with my iPhone 13 yet, but since the back is made of glossy glass, it gathers a lot of fingerprints and smudges, and there is a chance of this back gathering scratches over time. Applying a Capes India skin to the back takes care of all these problems, and at the same time it doesn't add any bulk to my phone. These skins are available in variety of color and textures, and you can get them for a wide range of devices like your smartphones, laptops, tablets, gaming consoles, cameras and much more. To know more about these skins and the devices that they are available for, head over to Capes India's website from the link in the description section. You can use the code TechWorks at checkout to get a 10% discount on your order. When it comes to high dynamic range situations, both these phones are doing a very good job. iPhone 13 gets Smart HDR4 algorithm, whereas the iPhone 12 gets Smart HDR3. What this means in simple terms is that HDR mode on the iPhone 13 should perform a bit better. In this shot, while both did a good job to preserve details in the brighter sky, iPhone 13 did a slightly better job with bringing up the details in the shadows, and we could see a bit more of the brick wall in its shot. Now something that we get on the iPhone 12 and is absent on the iPhone 13 series phones is the toggle to turn Smart HDR on and off in the camera settings. The Smart HDR triggering algorithm is very intelligent, and in most cases it does a good job on its own to determine which situation needs it to be turned on. But in some shots like this one, I'm just not sure if the HDR mode was fired on the iPhone 13 or not. iPhone 12's image has much more details in the shadows, and since the HDR mode on the iPhone 13 is supposed to be doing an even better job, I think it did not come up for this shot at all. And for situations like this, I would have loved to have a manual control over it. Hopefully, Apple will add it back to the iPhone 13 series with one of the future software updates. That being said, I feel Smart HDR3 on the iPhone 12 was a bit aggressive at times, and the Smart HDR4 on the iPhone 13 is not that aggressive, which is good. In the shot, iPhone 12's image has brought up shadows in the tree, and to my eyes, the image looks a bit processed. While iPhone 13 has captured many details in the tree as well, but it did not bring out the shadows so much that the whole image would look processed. I'm not sure if anyone could even tell this, but I observed this straight away when I compared these images side by side on a bigger display, so I thought I should mention it. Other than that, both the phones seem to be doing a very good job with the dynamic range. Until now, we have not come to a situation where the iPhone 13's camera convincingly beats the ones on the iPhone 12. We did see iPhone 13 capturing more details in overcast conditions, but you will notice that only if you zoom in on those shots 4 to 5 times, which I don't think most people do on the screen of their phone. Both the phones are equally quick at setting the focus on any subject, which is important for taking close-up shots. But since the main sensor on the iPhone 13 is much larger, its minimum focusing distance is not as good as the iPhone 12. What this means is, you can get much closer to the subject on the iPhone 12 than you can on the iPhone 13. This is not that big of an issue. If you are used to taking a lot of close-up shots like I do, you might need some time to get used to the new minimum focusing distance. But once you do, the close-up shots look really good from it. I feel the subject is a bit sharper in its close-up shots compared to the iPhone 12. Both of them have f1.6 aperture, but the iPhone 13 gets a bigger sensor, so the background in its close-up shots get a creamier bokeh. That being said, close-up shots from both the phones look really good. Unlike on the iPhone 13 Pros, the wide lens on the iPhone 13 doesn't get the option to shoot macro shots. Having that mode would have made the cameras on the iPhone 13 much more versatile. All of these were the images from the main cameras on both these phones. And now, here are some of the shots from their wide cameras. Apple says that wide camera on the iPhone 13 is also new and improved, but specs wise, it seems like the same one on the iPhone 12. I think any difference that we see might be a result of the new image processing pipeline that the A15 processor brings along. Just like with the main camera, we again see slightly more contrast in wide shots from the iPhone 13. If I zoom in on these shots, we can see one from the iPhone 13 being slightly sharper, but the difference is not much if you don't zoom in. There is slightly less noise in the wide shots from the iPhone 13, and the edges around the objects like this metal contraption also look sharper in its images compared to the one from the iPhone 12. Again, these things are only visible if you zoom in on the wide shot, but if you don't, ones from both look equally good. In this wide shot, we can see iPhone 13 completely overexposing the cloud in the sky, whereas HDR mode on the iPhone 12 did an excellent job. It is situations like these where I really wonder if the HDR mode on the iPhone 13 is even firing or not, and I wish I had manual control over it. We see same thing in this shot. I don't think the iPhone 13 took this image in the HDR mode, because we don't see nearly as many details in the shadows of its shot compared to the iPhone 12. And if at all the HDR mode was fired, it doesn't seem to be doing a good enough job. I saw a few other camera reviews and comparisons about this iPhone 13, and I'm surprised that no one else is talking about this issue. Hopefully Apple is aware and working on a fix. Both phones do very well to match the color temperature and white balance between these lenses. It feels like you are using two lenses on the same camera instead of using two different cameras, and that is how it should be. Coming to the portrait shots. iPhones have always produced the most natural looking portrait shots, and both these phones are no different. iPhone 12 was able to take excellent portraits, but occasionally it would miss detecting the edges of glasses, ears or some parts of the hair and would blur that part of the subject. iPhone 13 improves on that. It still doesn't get a LiDAR sensor like the Pros, but the edge detection in its portrait shots has been improved. Now the iPhone 12 is by no means bad at taking these shots. In fact, it is also doing a very impressive job. But to someone who looks at every part of these images, portrait shots on the iPhone 13 will look slightly better. It performs even better if you take these portrait shots indoors or in artificial light. This is where the bigger sensor and sensor shift stabilization on the iPhone 13 helps it capture more information, making its portrait shots brighter and sharper in these conditions. Its portraits are also relatively noise-free in artificial light. If you take a lot of portrait shots indoors or in less than ideal light, then I think you should go with the iPhone 13. But if you take most of these shots outdoors during the day, then you would get equally good results with the camera on the iPhone 12 as well. For portraits of objects, again, edge detection is slightly more accurate from the iPhone 13. Its shots also have more contrast, so they don't look as flat as the ones from the iPhone 12. While 13 is better at taking portraits of objects, its edge detection is definitely not perfect, especially when it comes to taking portraits of glass objects. In this shot, iPhone 13 did better than the iPhone 12, but it could still not separate the entire bottle from the background. In these situations, LiDAR sensor on the Pro iPhones perform really well. All that being said, I like to get my shots right the first time around, and for this reason, I would pick the iPhone 13 for taking all my portrait shots. But again, this doesn't mean that the iPhone 12 is not good. Now let's look at some of the images from both the phones which I took in indoors, artificial and lower lighting conditions. Both phones get Deep Fusion mode, which is activated in situations where the light is low, but not as low for the night mode to kick in. When this mode comes up, images have less noise and more details in them. As I zoom in on the text in these shots, you can clearly see that it is sharper in the image from the iPhone 13. I have mentioned it prior in this video that iPhone 13 gets a much bigger sensor on the main camera, and it also gets sensor shift stabilization. Bigger sensor is capable of gathering more light, which results in more details in the shots, and this is especially helpful in indoors and lower lighting conditions like these. It might again be difficult to notice it without zooming in, but elements in the iPhone 13's images are sharper and they also have slightly less noise in them. iPhone 12 is also doing a good job in these conditions. It also gets the Deep Fusion mode, and its main camera also has a traditional lens-based optical image stabilization, so its images are not too behind the iPhone 13. Some images from the iPhone 13 are a bit brighter. Without zooming in, images from both the phones look incredibly detailed, so if you like to take your shots in artificial light, both phones will serve your purpose, but the iPhone 13 will give you slightly sharper shots with less noise. As we move to even lower light, iPhone 12 wants to switch to the night mode, but the iPhone 13 doesn't seem to want to switch to it until the light is much lower. These shots are without the night mode, but both of them seem to have done a very good job. As we get to even darker lighting conditions, we see iPhone 13 capturing more details in the areas which the iPhone 12 kept darker. iPhone 12 wanted to capture this shot in the night mode, but the iPhone 13 didn't, so I kept it off on both the phones and just look at the difference in these images. iPhone 13 kept the shutter open for a much longer time and captured much more light in its shot. This point onwards, all the images are shot with the night mode turned on from the main cameras on both these phones. In some of the images, iPhone 13 doesn't add as much light as the iPhone 12, but everything is still more detailed in its shot with less noise overall. For this scene, you can see there was barely any light, but the night mode on both these phones brought back so much more details in this shot. There is a slight more contrast in iPhone 13's images, and this makes its images look less processed and more natural. When the iPhone 13 takes night mode shots, the exposure time for most of the shots is between 1 to 2 seconds, whereas on the iPhone 12, it is 3 or more seconds for these lighting conditions. So to get a same shot, you need to hold the iPhone 12 steady for much longer than the iPhone 13. Although images from the iPhone 13 have more details, honestly, iPhone 12's images look just as good, and to find any difference between the two, you will have to zoom way in. So I would say most people will be really happy with the images from the iPhone 12 as well. Wide cameras on both also get the Deep Fusion and night mode, and images from both of them look the same. There might be some more light in the low light wide shots from the iPhone 13, but the amount of details in these shots is pretty much the same. I did not like to use the wide lens on the iPhones before this, but with the night mode on both these phones taking good and usable shots in much lower light, I have started to use this lens more often after the sun went down. iPhone 12's wide shots have more noise in them, both with and without the night mode, while the iPhone 13 does a good job of keeping this noise level down. In most of the low light shots, bigger sensor and better image processing on the iPhone 13 makes its images look better than the ones from the iPhone 12. So if you take most of your images indoors or after the sun has gone down, you should consider getting the iPhone 13. That brings us to the front-facing cameras. Both these phones have the exact same front-facing cameras, so any difference that you might see in these images is purely because of the difference in the processor and image signal processing pipeline they use. iPhone 13's images are slightly sharper, and overall colors and skin tones also look a bit better in its selfies. Again, in bright daylight, it is very hard to see any difference between these selfies. In some of the shots, colors and skin tones also appear to be similar from both. Both phones get deep fusion and the night mode on the front-facing camera as well, so most of the selfies are pretty detailed from either of these phones. I tried very hard to find a noticeable difference between these selfies, but I just couldn't, so for normal selfies, both of them are doing equally good. For the portrait selfies, edge detection is slightly improved on the iPhone 13. It now tries and gets the glasses, ears and most of the hair in focus, whereas the iPhone 12 misses on some of these parts at times. Smart HDR on the iPhone 13's selfie camera is doing a good job of bringing out the shadows on the darker parts of the face and making the overall image brighter. So although we did not get a new selfie camera on the iPhone 13, the image signal processing backed by the A15 processor gives us better portrait selfies from the same camera hardware. Here's a video from the front-facing camera of the iPhone 13 and the iPhone 12. You can see how both these phones are handling the overall colors of the scene, exposure, and stabilization when I'm walking around with them. Both the phones have the exact same cameras, 12 megapixel, f2.2 aperture and 23mm lens. So any difference that you might see in the video quality is because of the processing that the new A15 processor on the iPhone 13 applies. When it comes to videos, both these phones can shoot 4K videos at a maximum frame rate of 60 FPS. So no 4K 120 FPS video shooting option on the iPhone 13 yet, even when the processor is more than capable of handling it. Videos have always looked excellent from iPhones, and these phones are carrying this legacy forward. iPhone 13 gets sensor shift image stabilization, while the iPhone 12 gets optical based image stabilization. While we might not see an immediate improvement in the stabilization, you should know that the sensor shift stabilization is working much better in the background. It can stabilize the sensor 5000 times a second to compensate for the shaky hands, which is way more than the stabilization capability of 1000 times per second of the optical based stabilization on the iPhone 12. As the image sensors get bigger, the lens optics in front of it also get bigger and heavier, so it becomes more and more difficult to stabilize it. The sensor behind these lenses is much lighter, so it is much easier to move it in any direction in order to compensate for the shakes. iPhone 13 now gets a cinematic mode, which in easier terms is portrait mode for videos. This mode is intelligent, so it can detect faces or objects in the scene and change the focus from one person to other on its own. Right now, it is available only in 1080p resolution at 30 FPS, but this is a great feature to have on your phone. This cinematic mode is exclusive to iPhone 13 series phones and is not available on the iPhone 12. You can shoot cinematic mode videos with the front-facing camera of the iPhone 13 as well. Just make sure to use a higher f-stop value so the video looks natural. For this video, I am using f10 and I think the background blur is looking natural. And the edge detection is also pretty accurate from this phone. With that, we have seen close to 200 image and video samples from both these phones combined. In bright daylight, we barely see any difference between the images from both these phones. Some differences could be seen in overcast conditions, and a few subtle differences are there while shooting portrait mode images. We see a bigger difference in indoor and low lighting conditions when the bigger sensor, new stabilization tech, deep fusion mode and night mode come into play on all the three cameras on iPhone 13. Throughout the video, I have been saying that the images from the iPhone 13 are slightly better than the ones from the iPhone 12. It captures a bit more details in daytime shots, which is more clearly visible in indoors or overcast conditions. It gives you the option to shoot in specific picture profile if you want to. Bigger sensor means better bokeh in the background of your close-up shots. Wide shots have a bit better processing backup. Portrait shots have better edge detection and lower noise in indoors or in lower light. And the low light performance is just better. All these small things add up to a significant improvement in the overall camera department. I can easily tell you guys to just go for the iPhone 13 because it gets a better camera system. But the choice is not that simple for everyone. Think about how much do you use the cameras on your phone? And when you do you take most of your images in daytime? If yes, then you can go with the iPhone 12 and save yourself around 9,000 rupees. But if you take most of your images in lower light, and if you want to use the wide lens indoors or when the light goes down, or if you take a lot of selfies, then you should consider getting the iPhone 13. So these have been my thoughts about the cameras on the iPhone 13 and the iPhone 12. But you guys saw the images too, so what do you guys think about them? Let me know in the comments. If you guys are planning to get either of these phones, I will really appreciate if you get them from the affiliate links in the description section. That is it for this video guys. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe to the channel for more quality tech videos like this. You can also check out some of the other videos from this channel. This has been Sagar and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.